Hey everyone. Yes, we finally made it. The end of my channel. At least after this video, I'm pretty sure the whole thing's I'm gonna be canceled, y'all. No, not really. But I guess to start things off, if you guys have seen my previous two videos on Venture, I thought Venture was a Turkish boy. I had no idea how wrong I was. Like, not just wrong, but like wrong in two ways, right? Because biologically, Venture is a girl, but gender-wise, non-binary. I had no idea. I didn't even see it like put anywhere, right? It's not until, well, I'll get into like how I got here, but I think some post from one of the devs last year said it, so I had no idea. I never even saw that. And I do want to start off by saying that you guys were awesome in letting me know. Like, nobody got angry, everyone was very respectful, everybody understood that I genuinely like did not know like anything about Venture. So I think it does have, you know, it's something to say about, I guess, the community like we've been able to build with this channel. It's a small channel, right? I only have like 3,000 subscribers, and I'm sure that after this video it's going to be halved. but it's, I guess it goes to show that, you know, you guys, we got like a pretty high quality community here, right? Not necessarily quantity, but I would rather have the quality, right? I like talking to you guys, like being in the comments, I like just kind of, you know, just discussing things with people that kind of give a benefit of the doubt to other people. So that's, you know, thank you guys for that. So yeah, anyways, you guys have seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, and you know exactly what I'm going to be talking about. So I debated whether or not I wanted to make this video due to the backlash I knew I was going to get, especially on the internet. My wife was telling me not to make it. My friends were telling me, you don't need to make it. Like nobody really cares. And, you know, I was like, okay, because I don't care that much either, right? And I kept seeing the conversation online and the message boards and, you know, other forums kind of go a certain way. As in, it was growing, right? More people were talking about it more and more every day. And I was still just like, yeah, whatever. It's just another internet conversation. It's not until yesterday where I saw the SVB Group Up podcast, which honestly is one of my favorite podcasts that I currently listen to. And anyways, I got to this segment where they were talking about the gender non-binariness of Venture. And, you know, I agreed with like half of the things they were saying. I disagreed with like another half of the things they were saying.
It's a video game character. Why does it matter so much? Motherfucker, you're here in a live stream spending your time listening to a podcast about the balance of a video game character. You clearly care. You clearly care about the video game character. You just don't care when it's talking about some sort of representation of a minority group.
If you are somebody who is like, I'm respectful of that community, but I'm not well versed in it, and therefore I don't know what the etiquette surrounding those things are, that's fine. I don't think anybody should be demonized for getting it wrong, because it's an honest mistake and it is just something they're maybe not used to. What grinds my gears is people who are told a piece of information pertaining to a character, look at it, receive the information, and they're like, I'm gonna misgender them anyway because I'm a dick.
And I thought that it would be useful to at least have some opposing views, at least floating around in the internet, that would maybe help contribute to this conversation, to the dialogue, just to kind of show multiple points of views. And the point of view I think I'll be arguing in this video is, I don't think you're necessarily an asshole by not using Venture's preferred pronouns. And I know what half of you guys are saying now, right? It's a cartoon. It's not a real person. Like, you're not offending this cartoon. And I get it. Yes, I know. I agree. But just humor me. Just humor me for this video. I think it'll be a good video just overall for the conversation of using somebody else's pronouns. But yes, I do agree. You're not offending. You're not offending Venture. It's not a real person. But the dialogue, the conversation is more of the overall, like, real life people thing. So I'm going to be talking more of in that context, which is what they were talking about in the SVB podcast. And yeah, I'm an African immigrant in Maryland, right? I'm in no way, shape, or form a hater of that community. I can walk to Washington, D.C., and there's like 4 pride flags on the same block, and it's just kind of a normal thing now. Like even in high school, I would participate in those things where it's called like the Day of Silence or something, where, you know, you go the whole day without speaking, to kind of bring awareness of, you know, gay people who are kind of, you know, trapped in the closet because they can't really say how they feel about, you know, who they like and their orientation and things like that. So I was one of those guys, right? My mentality was more of, why do you care what people do in the privacy of their home if, you know, they're not asking anything from you, right? They just kind of want to exist. So nothing I'm saying means that I'm far right or homophobic or any of these things that are kind of generally attributed to people nowadays whenever somebody disagrees on something. So yeah, anyways, after seeing the latest episode of the podcast, I thought to myself, what exactly do I have to lose by making this video, right? My channel doesn't have that many subscribers, right? And the amount of money I make on YouTube a month is like maximum 80 bucks. Yeah, like 80 bucks. Like, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the videos I make, like throughout the month, it only brings you like 80 bucks, and it takes like hundreds of hours for me to make any of these videos. So I don't do this for the money, right? Some of you guys who have who have been, you know, watching my channel for a while, you guys know that I have my doctorates in neuroscience, and my day job, I design nuclear missiles. So it's not something that losing YouTube isn't something that's going to really do anything to me. And you might ask yourself, how do you do neuroscience and then get a job in like rocket science? The applications of photons and magnetism can be applied to both in the equations, the math behind everything, can be applied to both in a very, very unique ways. So anyways, that's a different, that's a different conversation. But yeah, even my Twitter account, like I don't even think I have like 20 followers on that. So I don't really have that much of an online presence. Anyways, yeah, back to the, I guess my argument of that I don't think you're necessarily an asshole by not using Venture's preferred pronouns. I guess before I get into the topic, I do want to give my thoughts on the podcast itself, the Group Up podcast. I do want to say that I love the podcast series. I think it's a really good podcast. I think it's very well done. And I'm sure that after this video, they probably won't like me, like, or maybe they will. Maybe they won't care, right? I think they are very smart people on the podcast, and I just think we have different points of views on this topic, and I'm gonna break down why if you bear with me a little. But yeah, I think SVB is one of the greatest moderators I currently know in media. I think the way he lets his guests speak, how he's very respectful of other people's opinions, the way he doesn't really get too in the weeds whenever there's like a disagreement, but he gives like the benefit of the doubt and kind of tries to meet the person halfway of whatever they're trying to say. And one thing I do appreciate more about him is he's good at keeping track of the mic time everybody has, where if there's somebody who like probably doesn't speak as much, let's say you have like 2 different personalities on the podcast where one is much more bombastic and the other person is like much quieter, right? He's really good at being like, oh, okay, what do you think about this? Like kind of redirecting, giving the person the opportunity, kind of helping them kind of reach the gap in, you know, the energy levels, or kind of saying their opinions and giving that space for people to say the things that they want to say. As for Faria, I think I'm saying it correctly, Faria or Faria. I think she's also a very intelligent person and very talented at articulating her points of views. She's got some opinions that I don't agree with, which is essentially the point of this video. But she's really good at explaining her points, like how she got to her point of view, right? To the point where you can be like, oh, okay, I don't agree, but I see the steps that led you to have that opinion. And although I disagree, it makes sense of how you got there. That's something I think is very wonderful about whenever she's like giving her points of views on the game and just in this episode of the podcast too. As for Samito is one of my favorites of overall all of the Overwatch personalities, which I don't really know many of them, right? But I think he's very intellectual individual. I do think so. I think from the little that I know about him, I see the way he likes to break things down, whether it's in Overwatch videos or just other things that he talks about. I see how his entrepreneurship, all the things he's doing, and the aggression at which he goes after his goals, I think is very admirable. And the way I found Samiro, I think though, was because he was like one of the best Doomfist, right? Those are actually the only Overwatch personalities that I know. Because originally it was what's that guy's name? A guy named Chipsa, but I didn't really vibe with him because I was learning how to play Doomfist, and this guy named Chipsa, he was like, I think he's the best in the world or something. And I didn't really vibe with his personality. And then there's another guy, I think it was a Brandito. Some guy named Brandito, and I was watching his videos, and then there was a guy named Samiro, and then, you know, it's Samiro. it's this guy. So yeah, I really do admire the way he does the things that he does do. As for Bones, I've never really heard of Bones, so I don't know much. Again, I'm not really that into the whole Overwatch personalities things. Like, I didn't know who SVB was or Faria was or even who Flats was until like maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. And I only discovered them through the SVB podcast. So yeah, yeah, Flats, I think he's like the wise sage. The wisest sage of the Overwatch community. He's always like really calm, like speaks very softly. You know, I think he's a cool dude too. So yeah, anyways, that's it for that. So I don't, nothing personal against these guys. It's just, we're just disagreeing on some things. So anyways, how we got here. So I was going through the comments after I made my videos, and on both videos, the comments were saying, like, it would be like they, and then end of the sentence, and then the person would say whatever they wanted to say. And at first I was confused, right? It would say they, and then sometimes it would say them, and I'm like, what's going on here? It's not until somebody in the comment section corrected somebody else in the comment section and kind of explained what they were doing, and then I was like, oh yeah. So I'm talking to my wife about this, and about Venture. And, you know, in the context where I still think Venture is a biological boy, okay? And then my wife is like, that's a girl. And I'm like, what? And she's like, look at her eyeliner. That's a girl. And I was like, probably just long eyelashes, right? Because I have some friends from Turkey, my dude friends from Turkey. They all got like long, beautiful eyelashes. So I was like, no, it's just long eyelashes. Some dudes have long eyelashes. So anyways, I start looking online, right? And kind of looking for clues of like, what the hell is everybody talking about? And I saw this concept art of Venture. I think it's the one that was posted in the Twitter account of the developer. And anyways, I'm looking at the drawings and I look closely, and yeah, they do make Venture look very much like a girl in those drawings. And they also gave her the traditional Overwatch female long thick legs, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a girl. And also apparently the voice actress is a woman, but I don't know if that means much, because typically in the voice acting world it's very normal for women to do the voices of little boys, so I don't know if that really means anything. But Overwatch does go out of their way to get voice actors that are very like similar in look and even build, but in look of their characters. So you know, whatever. Anyways, going back through the comments, I saw a ton of people, you know, telling me the correct pronouns, and everybody was very respectful and very polite. There was no canceling, and it was honestly handled the best way it possibly could be handled. I think we've built a very good community here of reasonable people who, you know, can have a conversation and give the benefit of the doubt. Again, I don't do this for the money, I do this because I love the game. So yeah, but I won't lie, right? I do think it was a little weird of the consistency of correcting other people, right? A little bit kind of cultish, a little bit, and don't take offense to that. It was just like, huh? I've never seen that. happen like the way it did, right? Where people are telling people, "Oh, you can't say that. You gotta say this. I've never seen it like that before. But then again, I'm not online that much, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I didn't really like the whole, because a lot of the comments were like, "Oh, I hope they don't come after you because you made a mistake." Oh, it's very fearful for me, right? I was like, oh my gosh, like it's like, say it or they'll come after you, and I don't want you to get hurt. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's not that's not it's like a certain way of fear of getting excommunicated, right? That's kind of what I mean by cultish. But yeah, we're 15 minutes into this video. I still haven't made any of the arguments, but yeah, I guess let's start that now that I got all the exposition out the way. And before I get into the actual arguments, it's just the arguments to understand what the other side is arguing and why you can see how they got to that and why it would make sense. Right? You don't have to agree with them. I'm not trying to convince you or anything, but I would just want you to be aware of the counter arguments. So yeah, in the video, in the SVB podcast, they argued several points that I kind of boiled down to under three main categories. So they would be under the topic of discrimination and representation. That's one topic. After that would be speech, and after that would be fundamental disagreements. Right? Those are the three things, and I think under these are the motivations as to why after I explain these, as to why some people don't want to use they them pronouns, and it's not because they're assholes, right? It's for completely different reasons, and everybody can get along. So for representation and discrimination. So yeah, in the podcast, I had a very long discussion about the importance of representation, something I agree on 1000%. I used to play Overwatch on Xbox, but I switched to PC because they had announced Doomfist, and he was only available to play on the Overwatch PTR on PC. So I desperately wanted to play him because he was an awesome Black African character. I was like, yes, plus he was the leader of the bad guys. That was so cool. So I 100% agree with that. Even like growing up as a kid, I didn't know I was allowed to like anime as a Black person because I didn't see any. I didn't see any, right? I grew up in a pretty white and Asian community, right? So there weren't that many Black people when I was growing up. I think even now, demographically, it's majority white and Asian here. I think there's more Asians like by themselves than there are Black people where I am. So that's still the case. But yeah, back in my day, the only time you would see like a Black person like the movies was like when it was kind of a gangster movie or like a slave movie, and I hated it, right? It got very tiring seeing that was the only way, we were represented, right? It's what inspired the meme, can a nigga go to Narnia? Like, instead of all these movies, all these Black movies being like these, like these great historical think pieces and all that type of shit. Like, could a nigga just go to Narnia? Like, can we just like, ride with Aslan or be wizards or shit? Like, why does everything have to be like such a political statement all the time? So yeah, that the big shift for that, when that started changing, was when Kevin Hart started making movies. That's when I started noticing it. This was several years ago, maybe 10 years ago or more than that, where you would see movies where it's just like characters in a movie who just also happen to be Black, right? And that was all I wanted. That's all I was asking for. Like, to just be a normal person, right? I didn't want anything from anyone. I just wanted to exist in a way that, I did exist. Because personally, it's like the difference between, let's say, a certain race like Blacks or Asians, or, a gay person, or like a Muslim or women, trying to be a part of the community, is that they just want you to let them exist. Right? As in, you just don't get in their way. Just don't get in my way. I don't care if you like me or dislike me. You don't have to give me anything. You yourself, I'm not asking anything from you. Right? Just leave me alone. Right? The difference between that and let's say the non-binary pronoun issue, right? And this is the argument, whether you agree with it or not. That's I'm not trying to convince anybody anything. This is just, you know, the topic of discussion a lot, right? Like, so I'm not making the argument, I'm just explaining what the argument is, right? So the difference between the groups that I said earlier and the non-binary pronoun use is, it's that you are actively asking something from someone in those cases, right? In these cases, you're asking them to use your preferred pronouns, as opposed to, you know, let's say an Asian guy just being like, just let me exist. Right. It's just like, just leave me alone. Right. The use of the non-binary pronouns is you asking the individual to participate in your gender identity. Right. But me growing up, I wouldn't ask someone to participate in my blackness. Right. That's actually kind of the opposite. I was just like, yo, skin color isn't my identity. Right. It's just I adapted against the sun for this. Right. The melanin prevents me from getting skin cancer. Right. Or let's say, you know, there's a Muslim guy. He's not asking you to participate in his, you know, Muslim practices or his religion. He's just like, hey, just let me do my thing and you do your thing. And, you know, he's not asking anything from you the same way that you ask somebody to participate in your gender identity by having them use your pronouns. The two are very different things. And it's part of that the Dave Chappelle special. Well, I don't know if it was I don't know if it was one from 2020. Well, I guess they all kind of talk about it a little bit ever since 2020. But it's more of the ideology that it's cool if you want to identify as whatever you want, but how much do I have to participate in your self-esteem was the question. And you have the right to ask this from someone, right? If you're a non-binary person, you want to be called they, them, you have the right to ask, right? Everybody has the right to ask for whatever they want. I'm not trying to tell you can't be asking people to do this for you. You totally can. But I would say you also need to understand that the person has the right to say no. And it's not because they hate you, right? It's not because they want to be an asshole. And I'll go into what those reasons are, right? They're the next two topics. But it's broken down into two different categories. But let me finish up this section first. I think what we need to focus on is that the win in this situation is that Venture exists. Right? We have a non-binary character in the game now that everyone loves and everyone thinks is awesome. That's the win. Just like when I was getting movies of black people who were just regular people. It exists now. It's getting normalized, and it's in the back of the heads now of people that, oh yeah, some black people are just regular black people who are allowed to like watch anime. Or, you know, there's a group of people out there who don't identify as being a woman or a man, and they exist. Like, they just exist in the mind space now. That's the win. The win is bringing awareness in a way that now allows more normalization. But it's not a loss that people don't want to say the word. So now let's go into, I guess, the two reasons why, you know, somebody would say no. And again, they would say no not to be an asshole, but because of like different reasons. We'll get into those reasons, but it's their own principles, right? So first, let's do speech. And I know when I say speech, I could feel like, oh, he's one of those freedom of speech guys. I'm not talking about freedom of speech, just to be clear. And they did address this in their video, where I think Faria says that to not use someone's pronouns is to say that it's not worth your humanity to participate in or understand why someone is asking this from you, right? And SVB says you're drawing a line in the sand for something that doesn't do anything for anyone besides make a more hostile world. And I'm saying that's not the way to look at it. I'm saying it doesn't have to make the world more hostile. We can just disagree and move on. It's not a line in the sand for no reason, or you thinking that it's not worth your humanity to do something for someone. It's that some individuals have different principles that are important to them and they don't want to let go of those principles. For me, is that I don't do things that don't make sense to me. That's it. If I disagree with something, I reserve the right not to do it. It's not any deeper than that. So like if I'm talking in a sentence and I'm saying they, them, In my head, it's a plural it's a plural way of speaking. Now, I know there's certain exceptions here and there. So for me, saying they, them doesn't make sense to a singular person. So I don't want to do it. That's it. Like, I don't do things that don't make sense to me. You can try to convince me. If you're able to convince me, then I'll do it. You got to give me, you know, all these things. But, you know, and some people, right, they do things even if they don't agree with it or it doesn't make sense to them, and they have the right to do it too, right? Both are allowed to exist, but it doesn't mean one is an asshole and one's not. You need to understand that my principles are very important to me. So yeah, just like the pronoun thing, I've been saying she and he for the last 30 plus years. I've spent over 30 years speaking a certain way, and to use plurals on a singular way is something that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I just want to be able to speak without thinking about it. And no, I'm not saying just mindless rambling. I mean, just speaking without constantly having the back of my head, did I use the right pronouns? Did I offend anyone? Is anybody going to come after me? No, I don't want that in my head. It has nothing to do with Venture or the non-binary community. I don't want to have that tiny, you know, looming space being taken up in my mind. And we can also contrast this with, let's say, someone who's trans, right? And if you guys have, those of you guys who have seen my podcast before, I have trans people on there all the time. Like some of my closest friends are trans. So again, we talk about this stuff on the podcast a lot. And for me, calling a trans girl she, using the she pronouns for a trans girl, takes no effort from me because they look like girls, right? So it would actually be more difficult for me to call a trans girl a he because I'm looking at something that looks like a she. So for that, I have no problem with that. A non-binary person is asking you to call them neither. So now I have to speak in plurals, which is something I don't want to do. And later on, there was an argument of, I guess it's the same topic, where SVB says that the argument that languages change over time. And yeah, sure, like a lot of things today don't mean the same thing that they meant like 100 years ago. And, you know, if you believe in what you're saying, keep pushing for it, right? Keep pushing for changing a definition if you think it could mean something else, right? You just have to convince people to like, kind of get on board with it. And eventually, you know, maybe they'll start using it. But also maybe they won't, right? Like there's been a lot of words that they've tried to change the definition of, and people said no, right? Just like certain words change, certain words also don't change. There's always a little bit of pushback, but it's your job to convince people, but not shove it down their throats, right? It's kind of like that Mean Girls movie where it's like, stop saying fetch, it's never gonna happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes people don't vibe with it, and it's not because they're assholes, it's just because they don't vibe with it. But yeah, if that's something you want to fight for, go ahead. More power to you. I respect the fight. I respect the you know, the, what do you call that word? The drive to make a difference. So I have no qualms with that. And, you know, their argument was that essentially speech changes over time, and the same people who don't want to say Cassidy are the same people who don't want to use the they, them pronouns. And honestly, I think they're spot on for this, right? But I think they missed the point why. So it looks like you can kind of split this into two categories of people, right? Those who care about what people think and those who don't care about what other people think. The people who care what people think tend to also want people to care what they think. Hence the I think I'm non-binary, so you should accept that by calling me by my pronouns. The people who don't care what people think don't care if people agree with what they think, right? I'm not using your pronouns, but you do you. We don't agree, but who cares? Let's just move on. Leave me out of it. So this is where I see the overlap of people who don't want to say Cassidy and also don't want to say the they them pronouns. And I do think this is the category that I fall under, right? And even online, most people still call Cassidy McCree. One, I think McCree is just a cooler name. I'm not saying this because, you know, I support whatever that Blizzard executive did to all those people. If anything, you could just say it's more, I just don't want to be bothered, right? Maybe you can call it lazy. I don't know, but I don't think you could just change names like that, right? I'm still calling Twitter, right? I'm not calling it X. And even the whole McCree thing, I think generally 95% of people don't care. 99% of people probably don't care. And I don't believe in the argument that you are hurting people by calling McCree McCree. For like 8 years, I called McCree McCree. Most people still call him McCree, and I see it. I'm on the forums, I'm in the comments, I see all these other videos. More people use McCree than they use Cassidy, right? Because they've been calling him that forever. And it's not because they support whatever that Blizzard executive did. It's because it's just a name, and we're just used to calling him that. I don't want there to be in the back of my head that I better say Cassidy or I might offend X, Y, and Z. No, I just want to talk. And I think that's most people. And I really don't think anybody cares that much. I really do not think anybody cares that much. So yeah, I use him, her pronouns over they, them, just like I say McCree over Cassidy, just like I say Twitter over X. It's not because, it's not because I hate, the other stuff. I don't think you could just change things like that, right? And that's my opinion. And the other reason why somebody would choose not to use they, them pronouns, and I think this is the part of my video that's gonna probably get me in the most trouble. And again, this one isn't necessarily my argument, but I'm just explaining the argument, and just so that you understand. It's more, some people just don't think it's a real thing, right? It's just that basic. It's not because they hate you. And I'm gonna go through that right now, I guess. But yeah, let me break it down a bit more, because like everything, it's much deeper than just like these 3 sentences that you can just say. So you have 2 camps, right? People who think gender identity is real and people who don't think it's real. But it's probably better to explain what gender identity is first. So yeah, so gender identity is essentially the cultural norms a person of a certain sex would engage in. Right, so if you identify as a woman, you're trying to participate in the traditional cultural activities of a female of that society, because traditional female behavior varies from society to society. By the way, the terms male and female are always attributed to the person's sex, not their gender. So people who don't think gender identity is real are essentially saying that there is no gender. You are an individual who just happens to exist in a body with male or female parts. You can be a guy who is a bit more feminine or a woman who is a bit more masculine. It's not a gender identity thing, it's just a personality, is what they would say. As for what is masculine and feminine, an easy way to describe this, at least something we've done in the science community, is more of, if I was to inject you with a bunch of testosterone right now, all those traits that get amplified are things that are normally masculine traits. If I get a vial of estrogen and I stick it in you, all the traits that are going to be amplified are feminine. So that's kind of the easy way to explain that. It's not perfect, it's not a perfect explanation, but it's a good starting point to show how it's not subjective. Now, people who say that gender identity is real, they're saying that you could physically be a man, right? You can be a male, but then, do the traditional female things of that society, like I just explained earlier. But now, if we have the non-binary argument. The non-binary argument acknowledges that gender identity does exist, but that they don't fit in any of the 2 categories, right? Hence, non-binary, right? But if you pull it back, the non-binary people and the people saying that there is no gender identity are more aligned than the other group. One is saying that there is no gender identity, it's really just your personality and it could be anything you want it to be. And the other is saying that they don't fit in any of the 2 categories, it's really just their personality and it could be anything they want it to be. They're almost saying the same thing. Again, this is the argument. So essentially, it's a fight between whether you think it's your personality or your gender identity. And to go deeper into this, if you look at the pride term from like when I was in high school, it was just LGB, right? And then now it's LGBTQIA2S+. You might be wondering, what is 2S? Well, that stands for Two Spirits, which has roots in Native American culture. Now, even if you don't agree, you can kind of see why some people think it's not real, right? How someone identifying as two spirits is not a real thing. I'm not saying you have to agree, but you could see why someone would think the way that they do and not think that way because they hate that group. It's not like being black where you can actually see that the person is black, or, you know, being Christian or Muslim where, you know, there's certain tasks that they perform to, you know, practice their faith or whatever. Or like, let's say you're a gay person who is physically attracted to somebody of the same sex. Many people don't think that you can just be nothing. Like, they say gender's on a spectrum, but it's still a spectrum of two things, right? It's masculinity and femininity. But again, gender being on a spectrum allows for essentially an infinite number of genders, which circles back to what people would just call a personality, right? I think in New York right now, they observe 31 different genders. And you would ask people, like, what are their pronouns? And let's say they say it's a Z and Zer with a Z-E and a Z-E-R. By the way, X-E and X-E-R are also pronounced the same way. So Z and Zer. And you would ask, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be identified as a Z and a Zer? And the answer is always, it's whatever you want it to be. It's your truth, so you kind of define it, you know, the way you want to define it. And again, the argument for that is, well, if a term can mean anything, then it doesn't mean anything. Again, you don't have to agree with the argument. I'm just explaining to you the mindset to see kind of how it can make sense for somebody to not want to participate in something and not be an asshole. I don't think that opinion is rooted in hate, bigotry, or, you know, whatever phobia this would be put under. Was it homophobia? Non-binary phobia? I don't know. An example of this in my life is foxkin. Have you guys heard of fox? Oh, I guess you guys have heard of foxkin. But foxkin are essentially hardcore furries, right? And you know, I go to conventions, right? You kind of see them there, especially in DC. They're at the Pride stuff. Baltimore also has a lot of conventions. Like they're around. You run into them from time to time, and they have their own pronouns or whatever they think. They have essentially their own pronouns. And I can say I don't use their pronouns when speaking to them. It's not because I don't like them or hate them or because, you know, I want to be a jerk. A lot of these people are awesome people, right? I play Animal Crossing with some of them. I just don't want to use foxkin pronouns. Like, I don't want to do that. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and they're great people, right? I know one who's an engineer. I don't want to use foxkin pronouns or furry pronouns, because by telling people that everything is subjective and just based off of personal truths, you're telling people to essentially exist in a state of cognitive dissonance, right? Which means that they're in a state of having inconsistent thoughts and beliefs, and they see one thing, but they have to ignore what they see and essentially kind of pretend that it's something else, and then try to believe that it's something else. And some people are willing to do that. Some people aren't. It's not because they're assholes. Where someone sees that you're either a man or a woman and you're there saying, I'm neither. Many people just don't want to do that. They don't want to live like that. So yeah, I think I better wrap this up soon. So at some point in the video, they say that to not use someone's preferred pronouns is to deny, like, I forgot exactly what they said. It's like to deny their existence or the humanity of the individual. And I know when I heard that, I feel for them, I really do. But if this is your reaction when someone does not agree with you, it's very unhealthy way to live. Somebody not agreeing with you, with who you think you are, doesn't take away anything from you. As long as you know what you are and you know what matters to you, that's the important thing, right? You shouldn't let somebody else have that much of an effect on you to the point where you're saying things like you're denying my existence. Like, that's not, no. But at the same time, you can't be mad at people for not participating in your beliefs. And I know a bunch of trans and non-binary people, and I honestly, none of them think like this. I would argue the vast majority don't think like this. And I go to the events, and you know, I invite them to my daughter's birthday. They're like, I'm in a group chat with a lot of them. Like, it's not the average way, like, they're thinking about this stuff. And again, I used to have a podcast. We were talking about this all the time. It's like a normal conversation, but to not want to participate, it doesn't mean that you hate them. They understand that some people just don't want to change the way they speak, or, you know, even believe that gender identity is even a real thing, and that it's not coming from a place of hate. Like, they know this. And I think maybe what's happening with, you know, the conversations, especially these online conversations, but specifically for the group up podcast, I understand that they are Overwatch personalities, so they have a lot bigger of a presence online, so they probably get a lot of shit thrown at them, like much more than the average person. So they kind of see the worst of the worst on a more daily basis, or just much more than the average person would. So I could understand where they're coming from, right? But at the same time, like, you can't have a discussion on Twitter or Reddit. Like, don't go there for a discussion, right? It's like if I go to a KKK rally and then I clutch my pearls because somebody calls me the N-word. No, it's not a reasonable place, right? It's just not a reasonable place to exist. And like I said earlier in the video, the comment section here and, you know, you guys over here, I think we've cultivated a nice, reasonable part of the internet. And it doesn't have to be big. It could just be a few people. So yeah, I guess this is my rebuttal video. Again, no hate, just a different perspective. I just understand the arguments for, so I'm just presenting it to you. And so yeah. And who knows, if SVB or anybody on the Group Up podcast ever wants to have a conversation with me to kind of talk about this further, I'd be more than happy to do it. But then again, we just kind of want to talk about Overwatch, right? Not society or, like, you know, discrimination and things like that. So yeah. And honestly, I don't think I deserve to be in a room with any of these guys. They are 10 times better than me at the game. The highest I've ever got was low GM. And you guys can see from, like, my gameplay videos, like, it's usually quick play games that I'm playing with, like, my friends while we're drinking or something. So yeah, they are clearly way out of my league, because I really only get to play like, seriously, maybe on weekends, and generally when I get back from work, like, late at night when all my boys get together, because, you know, we're coming back from work, and, you know, I have a kid and a wife and all those type of things. So Overwatch has become much more recreational for me, as opposed to something I take serious, like I used to. And I'm also I travel a lot for work on different bases, different sites. So yeah, I just don't have as much time as I used to. So yeah, like and subscribe, especially if you hate this video. And, you know, tell me why I'm a bigot in the comments. And you know, it was fun being on YouTube, but I guess I'm gonna be canceled now. And yeah, don't forget, everyone, no matter what race, religion, gender, or orientation you are, I love you.